Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us at this evening's Digital Open Evening here at the University of Leicester. Just to introduce myself, my name's Elliot Newstead. I'm the Head of UK Student Recruitment and Outreach here at the university. And what that means is my team that I look after, we are responsible for providing advice and guidance to students and parents across the country around all things higher education, particularly within the application process and particularly around things like student finance, which is why I'm here today to co-present this session. I'll be joined later on in this session by my colleague Claire, who's the head of our Student Welfare Service, who's going to talk a little bit about the cost of living and also the student support that we provide at the university, particularly on the finance side, as we know it's the kind of near the top of everyone's agenda and concerns at the moment. So we wanted to have some content this evening to help you understand a little bit how we support our students and some of the developments we've made here at the university. And we'll also be able to take your questions as well. So in terms of the session rundown, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the ins and outs of student finance and what you need to be thinking about next for those of you that are joining today that are applying to university for this cycle. A little bit about bursaries and scholarships as well, to give you some kind of heads up on where you might be able to find support both from the University of Leicester and slightly further afield as well. Then move on to Claire's section. And then if you've got questions at all, please do use the Q&A function. So in the top right of your screen, you should see a little chat facility, a Q&A facility. Please do pop some questions on there throughout the session if something doesn't make sense. And we'll be going through those at the end. My colleague Alicia is in the background kind of putting those questions together throughout the session. If you see a question that you are going to ask, then please do use the little thumbs up feature so we know which ones are the more popular questions and the more popular topics that you want covered by myself or Claire later on. So to start with then, in terms of how student finance works, we know it's a big area of information and concern sometimes with university applications. This is generally, how does the process work? What does it all mean? And what do I need to do next? And as I said, me and my team have lots of experience in this particular area. So what we wanted to go through first is kind of the nuts and bolts of the system and how it just works in practice. So kind of really broadly, as you can see on the screen, there are kind of two main pockets of support financially or providers of financial support within UK higher education. So you've got Student Finance England, or SFE, if you hear SFE referred to, that provide the tuition fee loan, and I'll go into these in more detail over the next few slides, the tuition fee loan, the maintenance loan, and additional financial support as well. And as I said, I'll go through what that means in a minute. And then you have universities, so for the purposes of today, the University of Leicester, that provide their own bursaries, their own scholarships, potentially grants as well, to provide additional support for university students, and they can be in the form of finance, of actual money, or they might be in the realm of equipment or coaching, whatever it might be for. It kind of is dependent on what the bursary or scholarship is for. But as I said, I've got a few examples of the ones we provide a bit later on in this presentation. So in terms of what Student Finance England provide in those three different sections, so the tuition fee loan, so tuition fees essentially cover, as it says on the tin, the tuition of a student at university. But I guess one of the main things to stress there is it also will cover lots of other opportunities. So obviously it allows universities to invest in infrastructure. It covers the cost for a student of any compulsory elements of their course, might be a compulsory field trip or potentially equipment that is provided or required. There's a lot more that goes into that than just the kind of sitting down and being taught by very clever people on subjects that they have applied for. The money goes directly to universities, so it covers the full cost of the course, and for the purposes of the University of Leicester, the cost of undergraduate tuition for UK students is £9,250 per year. It covers the full cost of that course all throughout the year, all throughout the time of study at the university. And as I said earlier, it goes directly from Student Finance England to the university. It doesn't go kind of via the student to kind of hopefully pass on upon enrolment. Students aren't obliged to take that out. You don't have to take out a tuition fee loan. The overwhelming majority of students do. And even if you're thinking about taking out some of a partial tuition fee loan, you can also do that as well. It depends on obviously your financial situation, but a lot of the advice is normally take out the full tuition fee loan. So that kind of covers your time studying at the university, I suppose. But obviously you are also then a university student. You have a student life. And that is essentially what the maintenance loan is there to support. This is very much this is very different to the tuition fee loan in that this goes directly to the student. So it goes directly via direct debit to a student's bank account that you set up with Student Finance England, and is essentially there for students to choose what they want to do with it. Now, obviously, with being a university student, particularly if you're, let's say, moving away to university, the biggest cost you're likely to have is accommodation costs. So whilst you might want to use it in other ways, the biggest cost there to support your time as a student is accommodation. So the bulk of your maintenance loan may go towards that, but it's also there towards the cost of food, bills, clothes, transport, whatever it might be. If you're a student that's looking at studying more locally, it will be there to support your cost of commuting to university. Essentially up to you how you use that. It's paid in 3 instalments as well, which is very important to remember. So you don't get it in one lump sum at the start of a year and hope it lasts till the end of the year. It's paid in 3 instalments, and I've got some slides later that kind of break that down into actual money, so you can get a sense of what is available. It is the other main difference between this and the tuition fee loan is the nature of it being partially means tested, and what that means is that essentially some of it is based on your household income and where you're going to study. So there are different categories of student, which again I'll show you in a minute. And everyone is entitled to some support in terms of a maintenance loan, and then the rest of that is based on household income. But so the next slide I think breaks that down into more financial detail. But essentially, yeah, when you hear the term student loan referred to, and I'll come on to repayments later on, that is your tuition fee loan plus your maintenance loan merged together into your student loan, and that is what you start repaying back upon graduation. Now, the third element within Student Finance England is additional support. And I'd really stress the importance of this because it sometimes goes missed by students applying to higher education. Is there's lots of sources of money out there, particularly for disabled students, and that includes also things like dyslexia, dyspraxia. There is a disabled students allowance. There's childcare grants. So if you're an adult looking to enter into higher education, you have childcare to support. There are grants to help that. Again, parents a learning allowance if you're in that situation. If you have adults that are dependent on you and you're looking to study in higher education, there are grants to support that as well. So really worth looking into all of those. They are part of the same application form. So whilst you can miss it, you have to kind of actively miss it if you like. So you would be working through that application form and see those bits of additional support. But when I say people miss it, people sometimes don't think they're eligible for that support, when actually when you look into it in a bit more detail, it might be that you would have been. So we're definitely worth looking into. And the main area there is that pretty much all of those, if not all of those, are all non-repayable. So you're not expected to repay those grants back. They are given to you with no strings attached. Now, I mentioned a minute ago that the means testing element of the maintenance loan is partially means tested, and what I'll show you here is what I mean by that. So if we kind of start from the bottom and work upwards, essentially everyone that lives in a household that earns above a certain figure, and that figure is above about £62,000, gets a certain amount of money, and then even if your household income was above that threshold, you'd get that same amount of financial support. And as you can see here, as the household incomes go down, the amount of financial support goes up, it increases. The amounts of money you can see in kind of columns 2 and 3 here, they're the amounts that are paid in 3 instalments. So they're paid usually at the start of term, usually just after Christmas, and then around Easter, depending on when Easter falls. And as you can see, there are 3 main categories of student. Haven't included one of them because you're at a University of Leicester Open Day, so I wouldn't talk about it living away in London for the purposes today. But if you are considering other universities that are in London, do bear in mind there is a third category here that is living away in London, and then the amounts of financial support are different. But as you can see here, the kind of 2 main columns showcase that this is for 2022-23. I should caveat that 23-24 amounts haven't yet been confirmed by Student Finance England, but I believe they are due quite soon. And they do rise a bit. They are unlikely to rise at all near what the cost of inflation is at the moment, but it's worth bearing in mind that these figures are likely to slightly increase on what you can see on the screen at the moment for those of you starting in September 2023. And so let's say you're someone that lives, let's say, in London at the moment, and you're looking to move to the University of Leicester, you would be in the middle column. And as you can see there, the amount of maintenance loan you'd receive would differ within those thresholds based on the household income, and you essentially split those not quite equally in three. Usually the first two instalments are slightly higher than the third because of the length of term, and that's what you receive into your bank account to kind of do what you like with. But as I said, most of that usually goes on things like accommodation throughout the year. And when it comes to your student loan and thinking about paying it back, so once you've been through higher education, hopefully you have a wonderful time, and then you go on to a fantastic job and a fantastic career after finishing university. The expectation is that you would be paying back your student loan. And we do get a lot of queries and questions about when this starts to happen, how it works, is it optional, how much money is involved, is it affordable? So what we wanted to do here is kind of really reassure you that it is a very almost kind of safe system, I suppose, in terms of paying back a loan, about as safe as it can be compared to lots of other different loans that are kind of operating at the moment. And go through some of the, again, the nuts and bolts of what that actually means. So the first thing to say, and this is the case for students that are entering higher education in September 2023, that you don't start repaying any of your student loan back until you're earning over £25,000 after you graduate. And that is from the April after you graduate. So let's say, for example, you would graduate in July 2026, I think that's right. If you're doing a 3-year degree, your repayments would only start in April 2027, providing you're earning above £25,000 at that point. The calculation that's used, as you can see on the screen there, is 9% of everything over that threshold. So not 9% of the whole thing, 9% of anything over £25,000. And again, the next slide breaks that down a little bit into actual money, so you can see what likely repayments look like. If you still have an outstanding balance on your student loan after 40 years after graduation, then that balance is written off by the government. That has changed slightly since in recent times, but now it is confirmed to be 40 years. I mentioned the April bit earlier. So let's say you graduated and you went straight into a job earning over £25,000 in, let's say, the August or September after graduation, you would have a bit of a repayment holiday up until that April of that next year. I should also say it's automatic as well in terms of the payment. So you don't get a choice because it's linked to your tax code. So the repayments would automatically start and automatically stop. Let's say if your salary were to dip below £25,000 for whatever the reason that might be. It might be that you take a career break, it might be that you go off and have children, etc. At that stage, your repayments would automatically freeze if it dipped under £25,000. So there won't be students that are earning below that threshold that are paying any student loan back. So in terms of affordability, it is very much an affordable loan, because if you're not earning that threshold, you're not paying anything back. As you can see, the penultimate point shows that the government have recently confirmed that the repayment threshold will be frozen at £25,000 until 2026-27. Upon then, it will be reviewed again. Obviously, there may or may not be a change of government by that point, so it's hard to predict the future in that front. But this will be confirmed. This is confirmed for students starting in 2023. And I guess the final point to reinforce is that a student loan, whilst it doesn't affect your credit rating, it is asked about on things like mortgage applications or finance applications for various things. But because of the kind of safeness of the student loan system in terms of the affordability element, it won't have a negative impact on that discussion. I mentioned a minute ago I'd show you some actual money and what it means in terms of repayments, and here they are. So as you can see here, on the left-hand side, you've got salaries going up. In the middle column, you've got what that monthly income looks like in terms of pre-tax income. And then you've got the repayments on the right-hand side. So as you can see, let's take the £30,000 salary. You've got a monthly income of £2,500 pre-tax. And I've got an actual kind of demo payslip on the next slide to show you as well, to see what that actually looks like in practice. What happens with your student loan, as I said earlier, so it's 9% of any income above the £25,000 threshold, then essentially divided by 12. So you would be, obviously your salary is £5,000 above the threshold, 9% of 5,000 across 12 months is what you'd be paying, which equates to £37.50 per month, which I guess is similar-ish to a phone contract, depending on your phone and your contract. But then the other thing to stress is this comes out before your salary is received into your bank account. So you would get it before it would be taken away before you have your bank account money. I'm getting accosted by my daughter as well at the same time. So in terms of the repayments, as you can see here, it's very affordable. And the way it works is that even as your salary goes up and up and up on the left hand side, so let's say it went up to 50, 60, 70, 80, the calculation is still the same. As you can see on here, we have kind of created using a handy website on the left hand side the salary calculator to kind of put together a demo payslip and to kind of showcase what this means. So as you can see, the basic salary on the left hand side, £2,500, various different deductions, and as you can see there, student loan is in that deductions column alongside your pension, your national insurance, tax, essentially any salary sacrifice stuff you might have, childcare vouchers, etc. It's taken then, so it's not like you have your salary in and then it comes out. It's all sorted before you get your net payment in, as you can see on the bottom right there. So as you can see, in terms of the student loan amount of £37.50, it is comparatively fairly small compared to your tax, your national insurance, your pension, but also compared to your net payment that you receive. So hopefully that reassures those that were wondering how affordable that might be. But again, happy to take questions on that at the end of today's session. In terms of the next steps and when do you apply for this for student finance, this is often a question we also get, and how it works. So it's all done online via the government student finance webpage, and the link is on the screen there. Essentially, also if you Google student finance, it'll be your top search. It's all online. It is an application that essentially the student will start, and then they'll kind of almost like a dummy application or a side application will go off to the parents or guardians that are kind of supporting the application. We've put the second point here, they usually open around February or March. The Student Finance England haven't yet confirmed, they don't have a specific date because they have to wait for government approval on the whole system for that next cycle, and that is not a confirmed date each year. So it's not like the UCAS deadline, which is a certain date each year, but it's usually towards the end of February or early March. I mentioned earlier around the household income and how that is the means tested bit of the maintenance loan. That household income is assessed, as you can see on the screen, based on the previous tax year. If you have had a significant change of income between this and the next tax year and the current tax year, then you can apply for what's called a current income assessment to kind of showcase that. So if they're, for examples of if your income has significantly dipped in this tax year compared to the previous tax year, you'd probably look at having a current income assessment, because that would essentially provide additional financial support for the student starting university. You can, as you can see here as well, you can apply even if you haven't made any decisions on UCAS. So often we have lots and lots of students that delay their application for student finance because they haven't made their final decision on where you can apply, or where you're going to be your firm choice, for example. Now, this is something we really stress you probably shouldn't do. You should definitely get your application in, even if you haven't confirmed that, because you can change the university that you put on your student finance form really up until enrolment. No money changes hands before you enroll, so it's really worth taking the stress away and putting the application in for student finance in good time upon when it opens, so you can then focus on things like exams and getting prepared for university, and kind of concrete your choice in later on, or put at the initial application stage, put where you think is going to be your first choice if all goes well, and then if you need to make a change, then you can. There is an information box that asks you to share your information with the university. We really recommend you tick that, because that is essentially allowing Student Finance England to share your financial details with us and your household income details with us, which is sometimes really important for things like scholarship offers, or sometimes accommodation provision, but bursary offers, things like that, which are dependent on household income. If you don't share your information with us, we won't know that, and so you won't automatically be awarded with anything that you might be eligible for. I know people get quite funny in terms of sharing information, quite rightly so, but this is a really good tick box to tick. You do reapply every year. It's relatively easy to reapply. It's essentially, is your information the same? Yes, no. If it is yes, then it essentially sends off the same application each year, so it refreshes your finance form. If anything has changed, you do then have the opportunity to update that finance application. There is a deadline, which is provided by Student Finance England, which is essentially there to confirm that all applications that are submitted by that deadline will definitely be actioned and will definitely have everything in place by the time you start university. The applications that are received after the deadline, that kind of guarantee is kind of revoked by Student Finance England, because they can't guarantee that will happen. The majority of the time they will try. It takes about, on average, 6 weeks for a finance application to be processed, but obviously there are peaks and troughs throughout the year. The deadline is usually around the end of May. So you've got probably a couple of months from when it opens, 3 months maybe from when it opens, to get that in. So we really recommend doing that. I think normally about 75% of students get their application in before the deadline. We'd really like to see that above 80 if we're honest. So definitely get your application in once that opens. I'm going to finish off my section by talking a little bit about bursaries and scholarships before handing over to Claire. So the main thing to stress with bursaries and scholarships is that they are usually non-repayable elements of financial support or other support that universities provide. I'm just going to highlight a couple that the University of Leicester provides to give you some awareness of what they might look like, and hopefully they will be of interest to you if you're considering the university. The first one is our Citizens of Change Scholarship, which is a fantastic scholarship that we've had in place for about 3 years now. And as you can see on the screen, in terms of what's on offer, it's quite a weighty scholarship. So £2,500 per year for your first 3 years of your course. For UK students, there are also 50 scholarships for international students, which is 50% off your first year tuition fee for your undergraduate study at the university. Essentially, who can apply is anyone that has applied to Leicester and that holds an offer with us. You're only really eligible if you make Leicester your firm choice and come and study to the university, because we wouldn't give you a scholarship if you went to a different university, which is the same for every other scholarship in the country. The real difference with this one, as you can see at the bottom in terms of the application, is that this is a video-based scholarship, and what we want you to tell us is, what do you want to change? We have a big campaign called Citizens of Change, where we want students to be at the heart of everything we do, and we really want you as prospective students to tell us, what do you want to change? And we're looking for the most kind of impactful, creative, kind of realistic videos as well, using either TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube, however you want to do it. That just answers that question. It could be a really big real world thing, it could be a small thing, it could be something relevant to you, your community, anything really. And it's submitted via an online application form, which you'll get as part of your email communications from the university. And just to highlight, just to round off from my side, we have a whole range of other scholarships too, ranging from our mature student scholarship to a more broad University of Leicester one. Sports, music, choral, alumni, various other ones as well, all across our provision. So really worth taking a look at the scholarship pages on our website, because there's bound to be something out there for you. And we really recommend, sometimes you have to proactively look for these. Some of them will be automatically awarded. So for example, the University of Leicester scholarship, the top right one, that is offered to students that are living in postcodes that have a kind of lower proportion of students entering into higher education, or if you completed a specific program with us, like Realising Opportunities or Pathways to Law, you'll be automatically eligible for those ones. So that's about it from me. I'm now going to pass over to my colleague, Claire, who's going to talk a little bit about the support that we provide at the university for our students and what we've recently launched. So over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Elliot. Good evening, everybody. So cost of living is unfortunately a hot topic for everybody, and we're really conscious actually about how we can support students, particularly students who are living away from home for the first time, and how we can be providing some additional support and advice. So the next slide talks a little bit about some of the proactive work that we have at the moment. So it's a nice example of some of the real activity that we've got going on to support students. So we recently designed our cost of living hub. So we've got one specific point for students to go to online that gives all of the information around some of the bits that Elliot's already discussed in terms of scholarships and bursaries, but also some very practical things in terms of toolkits for budgeting, being able to look at kind of your personal budgeting and what that might mean. Again, if you're doing that for the first time and you're managing kind of 3 chunks of money, that might be quite different for some individuals. So looking at how we can advise on that. And then again, some of the very practical things is then in terms of the actual financial support that we can provide. So generally we have available hardship funds, which is dedicated money that the university provide to support students who may be experiencing financial hardship. And what that means is we have awards that we're able to make to students who have specific circumstances. So if you are a care leaver or you have experience of being in care, if you have caring responsibilities, if you're an estranged student, then we would be encouraging you to contact us as soon as possible and let us know. And again, as part of your UCAS application, disclosing some of those bits of information so that we can then look to do a full financial assessment. Some of that's based on household income and some of that's based on personal circumstances, so that we can see are there any additional bits that we can top up with. So that's available for all students throughout kind of normal times, whilst we're looking specifically in terms of the increased cost of living and knowing that that may not only be impacting students directly, but also it might be impacting parents and carers and homes that people may have additional bits of money topped up from. So we've got very specific pots of money that we've dedicated that are for cost of living that students can then use to contribute towards. That may be utility bills, it may be towards costs of commuting and transport, but those are very easy applications that students can make so that we can make very quick assessments and make awards very quickly. We also have some, again, some very practical bits in terms of being able to support students with finances where there may be an issue around accessing money. So as Elliot said, if you've applied early, then that should mean everything works in a straight line, but sometimes things don't work in a straight line. So if funds aren't available or there has been some personal circumstances, we're able to issue emergency loans. And we're able to kind of ensure that every student has got what they need in terms of essential living costs, so that we are able to provide some short-term solutions and then work with individuals around what it might mean for their long-term finances. And again, in terms of scholarships and bursaries, looking to kind of identify if students have applied for them, if students are eligible, and being able to provide some advice and guidance as students move through their entire career. So the next slide I'm going to talk about is just giving you some real examples of some of the wider community and Leicester-based kind of opportunities to make your money go a little bit further. So we work really closely with our Students' Union, and we've got lots of great community connections in terms of being able to promote what's happening locally, so that it is about having a wider experience. And these are just some of the examples. My particular favourite, obviously, is the Crazy Golf, but I know that's not maybe everybody's first choice. So we do work really hard as well to try and communicate lots of this information so that students don't have to go out and actively find it themselves, but again working with the Students' Union to make sure that if there are offers available, particularly at the start of the year, we'll be promoting that in a number of different ways. And then finally, just to to reiterate some of the top tips, and these are not necessarily our top tips, but each year we will work with students so that actually what have been some of the real issues and actually what helps. So some of the very basic things, and again, if you're doing your weekly shop and you're doing that for the first time on your own, or you're doing that as a group flat of 4 or 6 people, then actually switching your ketchup can make quite a big difference in terms of money that you then might be able to choose to spend elsewhere. So working with students to then pass on some really handy tips, and that will continue as the year goes on. And again, that what we will do is we will ensure that all of these bits are then included in some of our wider communications. Often the best tips do come from students themselves, so whilst we have some expertise in terms of providing that advice and guidance, we'll always be listening to students as well, to make sure that we're covering all bases. So those are just kind of some of the, I suppose, money saving bits of advice that we've got. I'll hand back to Elliot.
Great, thank you very much, Claire. So that's the end of our presentation for you as an audience, but we're aware that there are usually lots of different questions and queries about student finance. So we'd be more than happy to take those from you throughout your over the next 10 minutes or so. So please do let us know if you've got any questions.
Hi Elliot, so we've had a question come in from somebody in the chat. If I'm from Wales, for example, will I still apply for finance using Student Finance England?
You would apply. There is a slightly different system called catchily named Student Finance Wales, where you'd apply for your funding. Some of the elements are the same, some of them are different. So the Welsh Government do provide some additional financial support for students. So that's worth looking into directly, as it'll differ from sometimes from student to student, but also from university to university. But whilst it is a similar looking website and it's still through gov.uk, it'll just be through Student Finance Wales rather than Student Finance England. But in terms of then the kind of eligibility side for things like scholarships, bursaries, etc., that would be the same or similar for students across England or Wales. Hopefully that answers that question.
That's great, thank you. We've had a question as well about the Citizens of Change Scholarship. They're asking if it's open now, and also they've seen that you have to use your own content, and would it be a problem if they used images from Google?
Good question. It is opening next week, actually, so good timing for your question. So yes, it's opening on the 12th of December. So Monday, the 12th of December is open for applications. And what we're going to be doing is essentially communicating with those that have been awarded the scholarship throughout kind of February through to June. So whilst it won't be something that it won't be a scholarship where we announce 50 different awardees right at the end of the academic year. It'll be one that we offer different awards throughout the year. So it's definitely worth getting applications and video submissions in early. And as I said, you become essentially eligible for receiving the scholarship as soon as you select Leicester as your firm choice institution, once you've received all your decisions back from the universities you've applied to. In terms of content, you can use whatever you like to support your video. If you're someone that isn't confident on screen, you don't have to be in the video. It is completely fine if you are filming other things, filming your friends if you want to change them, then that is also fine. I should also say, if you want to film something as a group, either if all of you are applying to the university, or if you have a particular kind of group thing you'd like to change and it's just yourself that is coming to the university, you can also do that. All we ask is that one of the group then selects Leicester as their firm choice, and then they would, if the video is selected as one that we award the scholarship to, they would then receive that financial support.
So we have another question that's come through about settlement status. So we've got someone who's in pre-settlement at the moment since the 2nd of September 2020, and they want to know if they're considered a home student or an overseas student, or where they can find out more information about that.
Good question, and that does sometimes come with other questions, usually from Student Finance England. So we would usually direct people directly to student financing to discuss their specific situation in more detail, because there are sometimes pretty detailed questions that the student finance team would like to know. They have a pretty active and pretty responsive phone line, so it's probably worth trying that first. They may ask you to provide supporting evidence, things like that, to confirm either way, if home or international. Claire, is there anything else to add from university side on that?
No, I think I agree, and we often get questions from students again, kind of pre-arrival around some of those issues. We would absolutely recommend contacting student finance, because they will be asking for additional information and for evidence. I would also say if you are more confused by talking to student finance and you do want to be able to talk it through again in a practical way, you are able to contact welfare. I know the information is all on the cost of living hub that I've just shown you that everybody can access. So yeah, if there's anything specific that you would need support on, then you can contact us at welfare at leicester.ac.uk, and we'll be able to provide some advice and guidance.
That's great, Claire. Whilst we've got Claire on the live, we've had a question come through about financial support for things like course, trips, activities, resources like textbooks, things like that. Is the university able to support with those?
So yeah, so depending on which school you're in, there are some funds that are available specifically to certain schools. So it's always worth kind of doing some checks there. As part of the hardship funds, you are able to as well look to put in an application. If it's compulsory, then there often is subsidy within the department. If we're talking about extracurricular stuff, then yes, we would be encouraging to put in an application. As a side to that, kind of talking a bit more about student experience and being able to get the most out of your time at Leicester, we do have an opportunities and inclusion fund that we've had for the last couple of years, which is about being able to provide some additional resource for students to take part in sport and active life, in arts-based activities, so that actually you can either try something new, or that you can continue to do something that you've previously been involved in but may struggle to fund that yourself.
That's great. And then we've had a question come through about part-time jobs available within the university. I don't know if maybe you or Elliot is best placed to chat about that, but are there any kind of sort of student jobs available?
I'm happy to take that one. Yes, we have a lot of different university jobs available across the university, really. So we have an employment agency called Unitemps, which provides a heap of different opportunities throughout the year that are delivered at the university, whether that be our fantastic student ambassador scheme, or working in different departments or outlets across the institution. They are a fantastic agency to work with and get signed up to as a student, because there are heaps of different opportunities throughout the year. That are within term time, you are restricted to 15 hours of up to 15 hours a week, because we'd also like you to do some studying as well. And then across outside of term time, that kind of limit and restriction is taken off. But yeah, there's heaps of opportunities around both the institution, but also in our local area as well. Lots of different university students find employment across Leicester. We would normally suggest Unitemps is a great first place to start, because, as I said, it's one that is kind of delivered in-house and offers you fantastic opportunities to develop at the university.
Great. So just moving back a little bit to scholarships, and we've had somebody pop a question on the chat. Is it one scholarship per person, and when do you apply for scholarships and bursaries?
Yeah, good question about scholarships. So more often than not, you can what's called kind of stack scholarships. So you are eligible for more than one. So let's say you found yourself being awarded the Citizens of Change scholarship, that would still mean you were eligible for other scholarships, like the University of Leicester one, or things like music ones, sports ones, for example. Any scholarships that don't have that kind of stacking option would specify that in kind of the terms and conditions, which are all listed against each scholarship on the university website. In terms of applications, I mentioned earlier that some are automatically awarded. based on kind of criteria, whether that be either academic performance or postcode that you might live in, or if you've completed a certain program. For those, you don't have to apply, other than applying to the university for your course, because we process that as part of your application. Some they would have specific application criteria on there, things like sports scholarships, and they will differ really widely. So it's really worth doing a bit of independent investigation into those to kind of assess when an application might be required to be submitted.
Great. And then just another one on student finance again. What happens if my household income or my parents' financial situation changes during my degree?
Yeah, so if it changes during your degree, what happens is you reapply every year at the end of every year anyway. You can also speak to student finance in year if anything does need to dramatically change. But yes, because you would reapply every year, you would resubmit information. So obviously if anything has changed, then there is that opportunity to do that. Either at the end of the year, or you can speak to student finance directly about changes within a year as well. And again, they'll assess individual situations and advise on what is possible. Also worth then also speaking to the individual institution, the individual university within a cycle as well, or within a year, to see if there's any additional support, things like hardship funds, etc., that Claire was talking about earlier, that might be able to be offered to you as a university student.
Brilliant. This may also be a question as well for Claire. I don't know who wants to take it, but how do your finances work for things like years abroad, year in industry, in terms of tuition fee and I guess maintenance loan as well?
Yeah, I could take some of this, I think, and Claire, feel free to chip in afterwards as well. So there is a tuition fee attached to it, a year in industry or a study abroad year. It is much reduced compared to a kind of standard year tuition fee. I think it's about £1,750. Which again, you can still access a tuition fee loan for as part of your Student Finance England applications. And then in terms of financial support, again, you are able to access financial support for that year. You also receive lots of different kind of pastoral support as well for that time on that year in industry or year abroad too. With a year in industry, you also get paid by the employer that you're working for as part of that year too. Claire, is there anything else to add?
So yeah, so I was going to say, so as part of your year of industry, you wouldn't necessarily be able to apply for hardship funds unless there were significant changes in your financial circumstances. As Elliot's just mentioned, that's because you would be receiving a salary or a payment for taking on the placement. For study abroad, again, based on your personal circumstances, we are able to make awards in terms of being able to support with travel costs and additional bits depending on where you're going, household income and personal circumstances. So I would always be encouraging to put in an application for hardship fund or whatever the scheme is running at a university, to see if there are additional top-ups so that you can start to build that in and factor that in terms of looking at a year abroad.
Great, thank you. And then a couple of last sort of quick fire questions, I guess, in terms of things like choosing student bank accounts. Are there any sort of ones that you recommend, any tips or advice for picking a bank account?
As I say, I'm happy to take that. I think some of it is actually shop around. I would be reluctant to recommend anywhere now to say for this time next year. Some of it will also be dependent on what you need that bank account to do. So looking at interest-free overdrafts, looking at if there are any additional perks that as well that are offered in terms of opening bank accounts. Most students' unions as well at the beginning of term and kind of leading up to the beginning of term will be giving top tips and in terms of how to open a bank account specifically and what that might mean. So I would absolutely be saying shop around, I think, in 10 months' time. Unless, have you got anything to add, Elliot?
Yes, I think that, I guess, just to add on your point, Claire, about the kind of additional perks point, look at what would be most relevant for you. So if you are looking at either commuting to university or you're moving away to university, but you think you might travel home a fair bit, and that might be by rail, then again, look, things like student bank accounts that offer either a free or very heavily discounted rail card are a good thing to look at. If they don't offer that, I would still recommend getting a rail card because you'll save your money in about one trip. But also look at what their offer is for second, third and 4th, 5th years, depending on how long your course is as well, and make sure it's not just kind of a 1-year only offer, and think about your time as a whole university student, not just a first year university student.
Fantastic. We have got one very quick question. On the website, I saw something about having to deposit £3,000 in order to apply to university. Can you explain this, or is there something about that?
So we ask for deposits for postgraduate applications if students are international students as part of the application. So that would be what that refers to, but all of that will be explained within your applicant communications in terms of any form of deposit requirement.
Fantastic. So we're just coming to the end now. So thank you very much, Elliot, and thank you very much, Claire. I've popped some details in the chat for everyone watching to follow up with, but please do head over to any additional presentations happening at 6 o'clock, so in 15 minutes time from now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening.